Now, don't get me wrong if I had to point this out. Is Deontay Wilder overdoing it? Like, sure, a man with 10 title defenses for a WBC World Heavyweight Champion and getting taken away from him back in February of 2020 against Tyson Fury. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't say that he would deserve a rematch for a third time in a trilogy, but I still think Tyson Fury is the better man, and I think Deontay Wilder is not known better. Yes, he has been training a little bit harder, and even though he's been working on body punches more than knockouts to the head, I still think it's a pour of shit. I still think it's hogwash, because to be honest, I just think that Deontay Wilder should have taken it a little bit easy to take on maybe one opponent, or even so, just to get back to Fury, or even take on Joshua, which that fight may never happen. To be honest, guys, here are my top 3 fights that Deontay Wilder should face against. I will make another video about the trilogy and my prediction of Fury versus Wilder 3. But for now on, here are my top 3 fights that Wilder should face instead. Here we go. Number 1. Dillian Whyte. Say what you want about Dillian Whyte. Technically a man with about 28 wins, 2 losses. You can't say that's nothing but good record. Even though he's 33 years old, born in Jamaica, even though he has been a resident from the United Kingdom, so you can't say much about him, other than a 6'4" heavyweight contender. Even though ever since his loss back in August of 2020 due to that shocking knockout of Alexander Povetkin, which he would rematch that fight in March of this year, even though Wilder did say that he would want to take him on during weeks after his loss with that fight, you can't say much that might be a little bit crazy. Don't get me wrong, even though Dillian Whyte did win back his WBC Interim World Heavyweight Championship in Gibraltar, if that's what the country is called, from Europa Point Sports Complex during that day when he defeated Alexander Povetkin for the second match of their trilogy, you can't say that maybe Dillian Whyte does have a few problems, and I think he should learn more of the strategies. Still, that would be a pretty good fight, and maybe Wilder might win the WBC Interim Champion, so that's the reason for my pick for this. And to be honest, I think that's a good fight. Number 2. Otto Wallin. Don't get me wrong, guys. Otto Wallin, even though he is ranked number 9 from the TBRB, aka Transitional Boxing Rankings Board, and even though he's not ranked in none of the top 4 major categories, which we don't know why at this point, but ever since that shocking victory with Fury barely squeaking out a win on him, even though in 2019 in September, and even though I had the scorecards 8 rounds to 4 in favor of Fury, I still think it was a little bit of a crazy win to see that. And after defeating Travis Kaufman in August of 2020, and then winning a fight in February against Dominic Breazeale, the guy that had 2 title shots but failed miserably, I think that this would be an interesting fight to see, because Otto Wallin got really dang good and surprisingly injuring the Gypsy King. So is he going to do the same thing for Wilder? Are we seeing another Swedish heavyweight champion that might be the greatest, just like Ingemar Johansson back in 1960s? Because he's still the only Swedish heavyweight champion of right now in boxing. So are we going to see another Swedish heavyweight champion? So I still think to myself that if Fury can win a 12-round decision against him, is Wilder going to do better? That's what makes this interesting, to see that if Wilder can do better than how Fury did it to Wallin, I still think, is Wallin going to do much more harmful pain to Wilder than he did to Fury? Even though he barely got outboxed, but I still gave the scorecard 116 to 112 in favor of Fury, even though other judges scored a little bit higher, but I still think Wallin still did a good job. I'm still thinking that he might have a good shot. Like, what do you think? It seems good to me. Number 3. Trevor Bryan. Don't get me wrong, guys. I would pick fighters like Alexander Usyk, but even though they have been reporting that both of those fighters, both Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk, are now fighting this year, even though we don't know if the fight is going to happen or not this year. And even though, don't get me wrong, even though Alexander Usyk has been ranking in the top 1 and 2 and top 3 and 1 in all 4 of the categories and major classes right now in the belts, still, they are reporting that fight for him and Anthony Joshua. So I'm going to pick Trevor Bryan. Why? Well, technically it's obvious. I would say Daniel Dubois, but you know what? We'll give him another chance later. But for most fighters like Zhili Zhang, or F.A. Jagba, or Kubrat Pulev, or Michael Hunter, or same as Alexander Povetkin, or probably Ajit Kabaya. The reason I pick Trevor Bryan to be the third player is for 2 reasons. One, Trevor Bryan was the winning champion in 2018 for the WBA interim champion, which was never televised to begin with, against BJ Flores. Of course, even though he recovered 2.5 years later, of course, he was going to take on a couple fighters in 2019 and 2020. Never happened. But he was going to take on Mohamed Machar, which used to be Manuel Machar, in 2021, but never happened. And the day when that happened, Trevor took over for him. And on January the 29th, Trevor Bryan knocked him out in round 11 at TKO to become the WBA regular heavyweight championship. He might beat Trevor Bryan for the WBA champion to prove if Trevor Bryan is the next American champion, does he have a chance? Because some fans might not know much about him. So if people want to know if he's the best or not, why not take on him instead? Now, Trevor Bryan did state it in one interview back in March of 2021 in an interview on YouTube. I'll give you the links in the description. Stated that he did want to fight Fury and Joshua as well. One person in the comments of that video did state maybe he should take it down a little bit and take on a fighter that's better known as Deontay Wilder, because that might be a better fighter for him. And to be honest, I kind of agree. I know Trevor Bryan wants to fight these British fighters, but I still think maybe he should take it down a notch, because if you're going to take on... Here's my 2 reasons. 2 reasons why I don't think he should take on Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury. One reason is the ratings, the money, the purse, the lawsuit. None of that is going to come, because I don't think people are going to recognize who he is. Even though he defeated a great champion like Trevor back in 2014, which was too long for a boxer to be remembered for that. So I just don't think he should take on fighters due to the money, because some ratings and people won't even know who he is. So maybe he should take on a fighter that's not champion yet, because if he defeats Wilder instead, he might get a big push and do good. The second reason I think he shouldn't fight those fighters yet is because we don't know if he's a bum or a hoax. And I don't think Trevor Bryan is. Like, he proved himself. He showed a lot of heart going 11 rounds the distance with the guy. Is he going to do better, or is he going to do worse? And I still think he might do a good job. So that's why I'm putting both of these 2 together. I don't want to cause harm to Trevor Bryan. I don't want to give him crap. I'm just trying to help him out here. And I think Wilder is a better pick. And I know this is my 3 fights that Wilder should pick. So if he defeats Trevor Bryan, he might win the WBA regular heavyweight champion and reestablish him as a 2-time champion. And that's the reason why I choose Dillian Whyte and Trevor Bryan. Even though I did choose Otto Wallin as well, but still, those are my 3 fights. And to be honest, that has to be it. So yeah, those are the 3 fights that Wilder should take on against. Yeah. But if you guys got any ideas what fighters you think he should take on against, let me know in the comments below. And with that being said, my name's Jason, and today this is Triple E. And I'll see you next time.